In the name of God, Creator, Shepherd, and Spirit, Amen. Depending on where we've grown up, we have had differing experiences of sheep. For some of you, like me, who grew up in the countryside, sheep were a very familiar sight and sound. Their baaing and bleating would be what woke you up in the mornings and soon became so familiar that you didn't really notice it anymore, a bit like the planes going overhead in Haberfield. My school friend lived on Dartmoor in a farm, and I remember one time when the lambs were born in January, one of them was found in the snow. And this little lamb was so cold that it had to be gently defrosted in the oven to kind of bring it back to life again, and it survived. For others of us growing up in city environments, sheep may be more unfamiliar. The animals that we encounter in petting zoos or in books and films. Some of you will have read Animal Farm by George Orwell, and he uses the sheep to represent the parts of society that allow others to manipulate them. The sheep represent those followers who don't know what they're supporting, but they do it anyway. But just as at that moment, as though at a signal, all the sheep burst out into a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs better, 4 legs good, 2 legs better. Sheep have the reputation of being rather stupid. However, according to lighthousefarmsanctuary.org, they're actually smart and kind and curious and brave, and they're excellent mothers and friends. Who knew? Whatever our experience with sheep, most of us have never herded sheep, met a shepherd, or fought off a wild predator in our lives, and if you have, we'd love to hear about it. Today is known in the church's calendar as Good Shepherd Sunday and occurs on this 4th Sunday after Easter each year. Our lectionary gives us Psalm 23, the psalm that is often read at funerals, the psalm that offers us comfort throughout our lives, the psalm that is so familiar to many of us. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. And every 3 years, we are given a different part of John chapter 10 to read on Jesus as the Good Shepherd. And this year, we have the middle section. Just before today's passage, Jesus had healed a blind man on the Sabbath, and the religious elite were furious. It was also the feast of the dedication, the holiday we now know as Hanukkah, when Jewish people celebrate the rededication of the temple. And Jesus was walking in the temple itself, the very place the Jewish people venerated as representative of their unique covenantal relationship with God. The image of a shepherd tending their flock would have been deeply ingrained in the religious imaginations of the Jewish people. They had a long history with shepherds. Rachel was a shepherd. Zipporah, Moses' wife, and her sisters were shepherds. Moses tended sheep before God commissioned him to lead the Israelites out of slavery. And King David started out, as we know, as a shepherd before ascending to the throne. The Jewish people of Jesus' day knew Yahweh as the ultimate shepherd over his flock, Israel. So we may wonder what Jesus was actually saying when he called himself the Good Shepherd in this context. Was he being deliberately provocative and equating himself with God, the Shepherd King? He surely said what he did, knowing full well the impact that this would have on his listeners, and most especially the Jewish authorities. On the very occasion when the Jewish people were celebrating the supremacy of the temple and its centrality to their religious lives, was Jesus suggesting that God's presence actually dwells in the wilderness, out among the wolves, the thieves, the hirelings, and the smelly sheep. In other words, among the outcasts, the irreligious, the ritually unclean, and the politically incorrect. So Jesus has just healed the man born blind, and this man who could not see now can see. Physically, yes, but so much more than that. He can see who Jesus is very clearly. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." And Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. The focus here is on believing through sight. And in today's passage, in the following chapter, we see the focus moving to one of our other senses, hearing. "My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me." The sheep listen to the shepherd's voice. There's something very reminiscent of Mary's experience here, of when Mary meets Jesus after the resurrection. We remember that she's sitting in the garden weeping outside the tomb, and a person who she believes to be the gardener approaches her and asks her why she's weeping. And it's only when she hears her name that she recognizes who Jesus is. There's something deeply personal and profound about the Good Shepherd knowing our name. God who knows our name. Mary hears Jesus call her name, and she then believes. Jesus goes on to compare the Good Shepherd with the hired hands. Jesus says that these hired hands are fake shepherds because they work for personal gain and not love like the Good Shepherd does. They have no stake in the well-being of the sheep, and they flee at the first sign of danger. I wonder who the fake shepherds are in our lives. Whose are the voices that we listen to our detriment? The voices that pretend to care for us, but really don't. Voices that sound like the Good Shepherd, but instead of being life-giving, are life-taking. Voices that make seductive promises we shouldn't trust, promises about money or success or physical attractiveness or prestige or national identity. What are the voices that call to us a version of life that is twisted and life-destroying? Jesus says, "I am the Good Shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me." This sounds very simple, doesn't it? But maybe our experience has shown us that it's not quite as straightforward as this. Sometimes there are barriers that lie between this assurance of Jesus and our faith. We may remember times when we haven't known for sure who God is, or when we've been unsure if we can hear God's voice. Perhaps there are barriers of doctrine. Do we believe all the right things about God? Do we believe all that the creeds say? Perhaps there are barriers of guilt. How can we really be forgiven when we mess up so often? If we belong to the shepherd, why is it so easy to wander away? And there are barriers of pain. We've cried out for the shepherd's voice many times and experienced silence. Or if Jesus has spoken, we've not recognized his voice. If the metaphor isn't perfect, or if it leaves much to mystery, can we still find the courage to lean into it, to trust it, to trust the Good Shepherd. Maybe what Jesus is saying in this passage is more straightforward and cuts through all the doubt and fear. We are his sheep. We are known. We belong. And Jesus doesn't stop there. I lay down my life for the sheep, he says. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice, so there will be one flock, one shepherd. Jesus extends the invitation not only to the original flock, but to all sheep, every last one of them. There is something powerfully and radically inclusive about this image. The Good Shepherd lays down his life not only for some people, but for all people, offers fullness of life to all, loves all. As our children's book today says very beautifully, black ones, white ones, spotted ones plain, I know my sheep, each one by name. I love them all quite equally, from Abigail to Zebedee. I find the lamb who's lost to me and bring them home so joyfully. This all-inclusive love is visible in the way that the Good Shepherd shepherds his sheep. We see many examples of those in power and leadership in our world making decisions that have little effect on them. They make them remotely, keeping a distance between themselves and the people who are affected by their decisions. And we see this only too starkly in the ways that wars are fought today, directed by those who are not actually physically present, by those who have no actual skin in the game. The Good Shepherd is physically present with the sheep. He is always with the sheep, protecting them from harm. The Good Shepherd has skin in the game. He lives with the sheep at the edges of polite society, out in the wild, untamed places of the world. His life remains in perpetual danger while the sheep experience danger, because he's in it for the long haul. He loves the lambs and he wrestles with the wolves. And when it comes to the crunch, he gives his life for their day-to-day care, and ultimately gives his life up to save the sheep. Last Sunday, we looked at what it means to be children of God. I don't think the Bible ever uses the phrase sheep of God, but that is what our passage tells us today. The question is, how are we God's sheep in the world? How will we embody the love of our Good Shepherd, a love that encompasses all people? How will we share the Good Shepherd's love and spread his goodness in the wildest of wild places? On this fourth Sunday after Easter, we know that Jesus is a shepherd who keeps his promises. He has already laid down his life for his sheep, and now it's our turn. Amen. Let's take a moment of stillness.